We hear all the time about toxic work environments in the hospitality industry. And that could be sexual harassment, it could be drugs and alcohol, it could just being bullied by somebody that's a work coworker. And the question is, how do you deal with it? Now, obviously, there's two different ways to deal with it, whether you're management or if you're a frontline person that's kind of the one usually taking orders. Now, if you're management, it's really important to obviously get this under control. If you don't, it's going to be a cancer that's going to continuously infect your organization. And in terms of long-term goals and strategies, it's going to be almost impossible to hit those things because it'll just continue to rot and rot and rot. So, I think that the questions to ask are, what's happening? Why is this happening? And then what can I do about it? And if you don't do anything about it, it's only going to continue to manifest itself in ways. And usually this is the kind of progression that you see, not overnight, but day after day after day, and the kind of thing that happens gradually, and you almost don't even notice it until it's too late. Now, if you're a frontline worker, usually taking orders, someone that's reporting to a boss, and you don't have a whole lot of control over what's being handed down in terms of discipline and procedures and processes and systems, then I have a couple ideas. First of all, this isn't a long-term solution. I recommend if you feel up to it and you have the courage to. A lot of us don't have this kind of personality, but if you do, I recommend you trying to have a conversation with your boss or coworkers about how you can fix things. I talk about the 10-minute sweaty palm conversation. It's probably not going to be very fun, but if you can kind of get past it, on the other side, there might be something hopeful for you. And that's if you enjoy working at this place, but you see maybe a few bad eggs happening here and there. Now, in terms of just kind of getting through a frustrating day where you feel offended or you feel frustrated, or there's just maybe a lot of gossip and things going on. I heard a story recently and I can't remember where I heard it originally. So if anyone knows, I'd love to hear the original source and leave that in the comments if you'd like. But there's a guy that's about to quit his job. He goes into the HR office and says, "Listen, I can't do this anymore. Enough's enough. It's frustrating. The people here are just gossiping all the time and talking behind each other's back, and it's just really not healthy for me, and I need to move on." So the HR understands his complaint and says, "I absolutely understand where you're coming from. Just before you leave, though, do one thing for me. I want you to go to a glass, and in this glass, I want you to fill it all the way to the very brim with water. Now, once you have it filled with water, I want you to walk around the office 3 times. That's it, 3 times. Come back to my office with your glass of water, and we'll talk." So, strange request, but the worker says, "All right, if that's all I have to do to kind of get out of here, then game on." So he goes, fills up his water at the faucet, and it's up to the top, up to the brim, like he was told to do. Walks around the office, carefully kind of making sure he doesn't spill anything, and does it once, does it twice, does it 3 times, comes back to the HR head and says, "All right, here's your glass of water. It's full just like you asked. I walked around 3 times. I'm gonna head out of here." And he said, "Well, just real quick, I just want to ask you, when you're walking around, did you notice people gossiping?" He said, "Well, no." "Did you hear people talking behind each other's back or making fun of people?" "Well, no." And the HR guy paused for a moment and then looked at him and said, "Well, it's because you were paying so much attention to not spilling your water that you didn't recognize any of the stuff that was going on around you." And I think that's a good way to look at our work environments. There's always going to be things going on. What can we do to eliminate them? Well, sometimes a lot, sometimes not very much. The most important thing we can do is control how we're showing up and what we're paying attention to. I think a lot of times we start to pay attention too much to the people around us, we get frustrated, and then we start harboring this resentment, where if we can step back for a moment and say, well, what am I responsible for? And how am I showing up? And what am I focusing on? If you focus on yourself, if you focus on the work you're doing, then nothing else really matters. Now, again, this isn't a long-term solution, but I think it's a good kind of perspective changer, at least for me. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If you have any other ideas for dealing with a toxic culture, and look forward to seeing those in the comments. I'd love for you to share this with your friends and let me know what you think. All right, guys. Have a good